Hi, everybody. My name is Tommy. I'm with a company called A Better Time LLC. We buy and sell vintage watches, and I'm here to introduce you to us a little bit, tell you a little bit about what we're doing. My partner's name is Noah. The two of us buy, sell, and trade all things vintage watch. And it has come to our attention that the best way to get some of these watches looked at, so that people can really see what a watch is to post a video of it on YouTube. I'm no stranger to YouTube. I run a sobriety channel called The Lifeboat. Been doing it now for almost a year. My two passions are sobriety and watches. I won't be crossing over and talking a lot about sobriety here, but if I look familiar, that's probably why. People. So we have a theory, and it's one that you've heard before, because Rolex ran an ad that said every Rolex tells a story. And you know what? There's a lot of truth to that. But we believe every watch tells a story. We have about 800 or so watches currently in the collection. There's about 350, I think, that are already listed on eBay. More go up every single day. We're also on Chrono24 on a lot of different platforms. This is my cat, who will make an appearance every time I don't want her to. How you doing, squirrel? Good. Atta girl. Every single watch that you're going to see us talk about on here are for sale, with one exception. And it's a perfect example of how every watch tells a story. This watch is not for sale. This, you can see the dial is starting to turn, right, on that. You see how it's starting to get that sort of desert look, right? It's vintage. It's a 1985, sorry about the light. It's a 1985 Rolex Submariner date, right? But this was my dad's watch. And when I was a boy, my dad bought this, and right around the same time, I bought a couple of swatches, and I would wear them and love them, and started to learn about watches. And when my battery died on that first swatch, and I brought it to my dad and said, "This doesn't work anymore, it stopped ticking." And my dad said, "Well, the battery's dead." That was the end of battery watches for me. I sell some, they have their place, but they're not for me. I'm not much of a quartz guy. They tell great time, people. If you're looking for a timepiece that tells good time, quartzes, they're great. They really are. But they don't have a beating heart. To me, the love affair with watches has something to do with the mechanisms that go on inside it. This is a watch. You've probably seen these things advertised around, right? They're everywhere. They're in an awful lot of stores. Light is a problem. I'm sorry, people. All right? You know these. Okay. Let me take the back off of one of these for you and show you what we're working with inside one of these watches. So when you remove the back, and this is a very, very large watch, coming in about 55, 56 millimeters. When you take the back off, that's what you're looking at in there. Now, if we remove this little plastic cover here, and I'm not doing this with my fingers, by the way, so when you remove the plastic cover, the pushers are not attached to anything. You see that little pusher in there moving? It's attached to nothing. And if you can read that, I don't know whether or not the camera will be able to catch that. It's a pretty good camera, but it says made in Japan, no jewels. No jewels. Yeah, that is what it says. It says no jewels, Japan movement. Okay. And has a battery in there. The pushers, again, not attached to anything, right? They just work onto these little pushers here, which will then, engage the mechanism. Pretty hollow, though. Not much going along. Mass produced. Right down an assembly line. There's nobody bent over this, taking unbelievable amounts of time to get this thing put together. People, it has its place. And if you're a big fan, then I think you should love it and enjoy it. However, the romance for me in watches is the amazing amount of effort that it takes to get one built. So every watch tells a story, right? That's our theory. Now here you go. See this watch? No name on it. No name on that dial, right? This is a very, very old pocket watch of a design called a Fusi. Now this loads through the front, and I will carefully extract this. This case was built for this movement. And if you can see in there, you will see a series of stamps and symbols. You can read those, right? And if you know what to look for, it'll tell you some things about the watch. It'll tell you that this case was made before 1805, which is pretty astounding, right? It is a key set and a key wind. Now, obviously, this is a pocket watch. This is not a watch you would wear on your wrist, but I'm giving it a little turn now. It has a dust cover on it. You see the dust cover? Okay, this is covering the movement. That little stone that you see right there, right? That's a diamond, people. That is a actual diamond jewel for the capstone there. And if I slide this little device here, I can remove the movement. Now, I gave it a bit of a wind, right? So let's get a look here at what we're looking at. All right, so if you can see that right there, has the name of the gentleman that made it on there. It says Liverpool, right? It says the type of movement there, right? So if you look on there, people, you've got the name of John Houghton on there. It's got a detached movement, right? A detached lever escapement. And it says the serial number on there as well. What's really amazing, people, his signature is here. Can you imagine what John Houghton would think if he knew that 220 years after he made this, that I'd be sitting and talking to people all over the world about his craftsmanship? Now, with watches like this, you need to kind of give them a shake to first get them going after you give them a wind, right? And you see that wheel doing exactly what it was supposed to do, which it's been doing for 200 years. Inside there, you see that chain? That's called a fusee. That fusee chain goes around a barrel, so as you wind that, that'll crank up a spring on the inside. And then if we want to take a look at the front of this movement, you will see that second hand doing just what it's supposed to, right? All of those years later, and there it is, still ticking. This is an absolutely exquisite piece of machinery. See how there's two plates there? You got a top plate, you got a bottom plate. Okay. There are pins inside there. Those pins hold gears, they hold wheels, they hold all kinds of things, right? On the gear train, on the barrel that holds the spring that keeps this wound. Okay, well, if you put metal on metal between those two plates, if the points were going into metal, obviously they'll wear out, right? Any kind of metal on metal starts to wear down. So instead of that, they use something harder than metal. They use jewels. In this case, they use diamonds because a diamond was harder than steel. These days they use synthetic rubies. But when you hear that a watch has a 17 jewel movement, that's what it's referring to. The places on that watch where the most wear and tear is going to take place will be jeweled. Let me give this a quick wipe down. And there we go. 220 years later, still ticking. That, people, was a beating heart. Tick, 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 back and forth. On more modern movements, some of and we're going to go over all these things and talk to you about them, but everything you see in people, everything with the exception of Dad's Rolex, is for sale. Dad's Rolex, if somebody said, tell you what, I'll give you $5 million for this, my father, as much as he would roll over in his grave, there's no way I would do it. I wouldn't take 10, I wouldn't take 20, because every time I look at that watch, it's a connection back to my father. And the story gets better because I'm not the oldest son. I have a brother named Johnny, also has a pretty popular YouTube channel. And Johnny was given the Rolex as the oldest son. And when they gave it to him, he walked up and said, you know, you and Dad shared something with watches that I never did. I know it's a beautiful thing and it would remind me of him and I would love it. But you guys shared this. It was something between you. I think you ought to have it. I mean, about the coolest thing that anyone has ever done. So that's a story, right? And because of that, there's no amount of money in the world that would ever separate me from that watch, right? So The question becomes, what is the story that each watch tells? And if a watch speaks to you, then that story starts. Another great watch, right? This is a Zenith pocket watch. You see that? Absolutely a gorgeous piece. Zenith. This was made in the early 1900s. And if we open the back here, you will see on the dust cover, right, where it says Zenith. And then it has all of the awards that the watch, I'm sorry, look at that. I had it upside down. And we do these in one takes, people. There's no editing. This is about watches. It's not about high tech, right? But you see all of the awards, and all of that is still there, still looking beautiful after all of those years. Now, this watch was purchased by an American officer right before World War I. He bought it in France. Now we know this because there's a little provenance with this watch, so that we were able to do a little bit of research with the family. It made it back. It was handed down to a few sons, and then it got to somebody that they didn't have a love affair with watches. Didn't mean anything, but boy, it did to me. This is also not for sale. I love this watch. It's got a retail of probably somewhere between $350 and $650. Not the end of the world, right? It's not ridiculous money. But get a look at this. Get a look at the inside of that. You see that, people? That is a beating heart. And it has been beating like that and keeping time for about 117 years, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. How many times over the course of that 117 years did somebody reach into their pocket and pull this out and look at it and go, right? Waiting to see whether or not they were going to have a boy or a girl. How long had the gentleman's wife been in there? Or a wedding you got to get to and you're supposed to be there at 2 o'clock. This has been through what? World War II, Korea, right? It's been through a man on the moon. It is history, but it's functional. And this watch loses less than a minute a day. It's still doing exactly what it was designed to do all of those years ago, with all due respect to this company. You think 110 years from now, this thing is going to be a story like that? In 10 years, this is going to be in a landfill. There's no jewels. It's a battery, and it's, look, there are battery watches that have jeweled movements. Keep putting a battery in, they may run forever, people. I'm not bad-mouthing the concept of the quartz. I'm bad-mouthing the fact that today we live in an environment, we live in a society, in a world where everything is made to be thrown out. Tell you what, these ain't made to be thrown out. People complain about Rolex and how much a Rolex costs, and people, you're getting something that is indestructible. If you've never seen Rolexes up close, you could take a screwdriver to this, right? That's a sapphire crystal. You can't scratch that, and this is my dad's, right? You can't scratch the crystal on a Rolex. A very difficult thing to do. It has to land just perfectly. It's a sapphire. The tolerances inside that watch are sometimes 1/10,000th of an inch. That's taking a human hair and splitting that thing 30 times. Think about that. There's a reason that people use the expression, well, it's made like a Swiss watch, right? Because they're made perfectly, people. They're made absolutely perfectly. And for that reason, vintage watches run basically forever. If you take care of them, they're never going to go, into the landfill. And we are doing everything within our power to continue that tradition and move it on. So we're going to be talking about a lot of watches. I'm going to be doing reviews, telling you a little bit about the companies that made them, a little bit of the history of the watch. If we know provenance on the watch, we will talk to you about it. One of the very first watches you're going to hear me talk about is a Vacheron and Constantine. Absolutely a gorgeous watch. But people, keep coming back. Keep checking, because every day there will be more of these videos, and every one of these watches is for sale. Now, the for sale price isn't etched in stone. You can talk to us. You can make an offer on a watch. We may not take it. We might. And I'll be really honest. If the story was great, we give you a good example. A guy came. We were at a watch expo, a little show. Actually, it was an antique expo, but we had a watch booth there, and A guy came up and he was buying a couple of watches from us. He was getting a deal for buying two. And he went, "Oh my God." And I said, "What's up?" And he pointed to a watch in the case and he said, "My dad gave me a watch identical to that before he died." He said, "And I had it in my backpack at school." He said, "And somebody stole my backpack." He said, "I've never seen another one since." Now, we made sure he got that watch, right? We might have had to not make as much money on that watch as we would have liked to. But I promise you, every time he tells that story, that's a story. That's what we mean by every single watch tells a story. And if you're a watch guy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You do. It makes sense to you. You get it. Well, we're going to be talking about watches here. We will also be reviewing some new watches. Chances are we're not going to do a whole lot of reviews on some ridiculously expensive Rolexes. I shouldn't say that because from time to time we do move some really expensive Rolexes. But for the most part, we're trying to get people excited about this hobby of ours, right? We're trying to turn people into horophiles, people that buy, sell, talk about, collect vintage watches, because it's the coolest thing in the world, people. And I'll tell you something, do a little research and see what watches do compared to things like the S&P 500, right? And people will say, well, they don't beat crypto. No, they don't. No, crypto's been just absolutely incredible. But did you get in when Bitcoin was $45 a coin? I'm betting you probably didn't. But right now, you find the right watch. I remember people, I remember buying and selling watches at a time when you could get an Ennakar Sherpa, the chronograph, for $100. They were everywhere. I'm seeing them at $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $13,000, compared depending on condition. Are some of the watches that we have going to be worth that much money? Maybe. Yeah, maybe they will, because we've watched this take off like nothing else. Read GQ, read any of the men's magazines, and there's an article in there talking about how vintage watches are some of the greatest investments you could ever make. But if you're getting in right now, you're at a really good time. This is about the best time ever. Now, 2 years ago, you could have got the stuff cheaper, but would have just been shots in the dark. Now, you can start to follow trends. You can start to look at certain watches that are really beginning to take off and becoming far more collectible. We've got, I don't know, maybe 100 Bulovas, maybe more than that. We're heavy on Bulova. We're heavy on Longines, because these are watches that are going up in value every day. Just came in today. Look at this Bulova. Look at that dial. Engine turned, right? So it's got that kind of a starburst. Now, you're not seeing this under the best of conditions in terms of the lighting and all of that, but fear not, you will be able to see this on Chrono24 on eBay this evening. Look at the side profile of that watch. If you look at the crystal, you will see how it dips in. It's like scalloped around the glass. Absolutely breathtaking, and no battery required. The movement of your arm winds this watch. It's people, what goes into making a mechanical watch. You cannot compare it to what you saw inside this thing that I just showed you. Bear with me, because I don't want to. I got to use some tweezers to do what I'm about to do. So just bear with me 1 second. But I wanted to show you the inside of this watch. I'm removing the little ring that helps hold that watch in place. Hold the movement in place. Now you see the inside of this. All right? So it says Bulova on that. That is the weight. Now as you see this start to move, you see how that weight turns inside the watch, right? That is the weight that is going to wind that watch. And there is the balance wheel. There is the balance wheel. You know what that is, people? That's a beating heart. Now, this watch will be serviced. We will get this thing all buttoned up. It's going to be cleaned. It's going to be oiled. It's going to be ready to roll. And you will probably see it on the in the store within a couple of days, 2, 3 days. Probably not up there tonight because this watch does require a little bit of work. We like making sure that what we send out is in really good shape, ready to be put on a wrist, worn, and enjoyed. Now, there are times where there are watches that we will not repair, certain things that it may not be worth it for us. We will never pass one of those on to you without telling you about it. Today, or maybe it was yesterday, we sold a beautiful Rado. Had an issue with the date wheel, and it wasn't one we wanted to mess with. So we passed it on for damn near nothing. We're never going to tell you. We're never not going to tell you about something that's wrong with a watch. If there is a watch that there's an issue with, we're going to point that issue out. We have 100% customer satisfaction. Truthfully, check us out. A Better Time. We've never had a complaint because we're fairly serious about making sure that you are going to love the watch you get. Why? Because we love watches. You understand? We get it. We get it. This isn't just a way to make money. For us, this is a passion. We love watches. So, I am Tommy with A Better Time, LLC. Watch me, and I will show you a bunch of really cool watches, and you'll have an opportunity to buy them. The beautiful thing is, if the price that we talk about isn't what you want to pay, I'm not the only people selling. I promise you. Noah and I put out a really good product. Great watches at good prices. But if you miss it, if somebody gets there first, learn what you can about what we talk about on the watch, and then go hunt one down for yourself. Start getting into it. Like I said, I mentioned 2 brands. There are so many more. You're going to see Elgins, you're going to see Hamiltons, you're going to see Rolexes, you're going to see all kinds of great brands here. But not going to see a whole lot of new ones. Occasionally. But for the most part, everything we're going to be talking about is vintage. Because vintage watches tell a story. Right? True story. All right, people. Check us out on the first video. It's a Vacheron and Constantine. It's going to be a beautiful one. I am Tommy. We'll see you on the next watch.